Are you using the right fishing rod for the job? Let's talk about it. My name is Andrew. This is Fishing the 262, and I've been building fishing rods for myself for over a decade, and I've been fishing for 40 of my 46 years on Earth. So I got a little bit of experience as a builder. I've got a lot of experience as a fisherman. Let's jump into it. We're going to go over the basics for the beginners, and we're going to get into some more advanced stuff for people that have been doing this for a long time. And I learned a bunch of this stuff when I started building rods. And I'm going to hopefully speed up your learning curve. So let's jump into it. There are some fundamental things that we need to know when we buy a fishing rod. What are we talking about? We're talking about the length of rod, the handle. We're going to talk about power, and we're going to talk about action. Now, two of those things are going to be very personal. Two of these things are going to be just factual. When it comes to personalization of a rod, there's a couple things we're going to look at. Length. That's going to be strictly up to you. You're going to have to find out what length rod that you like to fish with the most. For me, I'm going to be somewhere between 7 foot and 7'6" for the most part with a spinning rod. I typically like to be in that 7'3" range. There's a couple of reasons for that. Number one, 7'3s fit in my rod lockers and my boat better. And number two, my boat's not that big. If there's two grown men swinging 7'6s around in there, it can get a little bit crowded. So 7'3 is kind of the sweet spot for me personally. That's going to be different for you. If you fish alone, that 7'6 isn't going to matter. If you're in a 21 footer, that 7'6 isn't going to matter as much. It's a very personal part of buying a rod, right? The next thing that's also very personal is going to be the handle. This is a busted up old Daiwa here, but it just happens to be handy, so I'm going to use this for my example. When we're looking at handles, we got to look at a couple of things. First and foremost, are you looking for a split grip like this? Or are you looking for a solid one-piece handle? So that's personal. That's unique to every individual. I prefer a split grip, but I do prefer cork over the EVA foam like this rod had. One thing that I'm really particular about on a spinning rod is this VSS style. This is the Daiwa proprietary reel seat, but it's very similar to the VSS from Fuji. The reason I like it is it's got a good amount of foregrip on it. When I hold the spinning rod, I'm going to have these three fingers are going to be in front of the stem. So I like to have two fingers on the foam or cork and then one finger on the blank. Other people will prefer almost no foregrip or none at all so that they go direct to the blank. Again, strictly unique to you as an individual. What's not unique to you as an individual are the other two items we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about power and action. Two very different things that oftentimes get confused. Power refers to the actual lifting strength of the rod itself, and that's going to be listed out anywhere from ultralight all the way up to extra heavy. So if we take a medium powered rod, it's going to have substantially more lifting power than an ultralight or substantially less power than an extra heavy. So power refers to actual lifting strength of the blank. I have a rod that I'm about to build right here, and I'm going to use this to try to demonstrate action as best as I can on camera. And action refers to how fast the rod gets into the backbone, or some people will refer to that as the taper of the rod. Essentially, we're talking about how fast we go from loaded to straight. This is an extra fast. You can see that thing gets into the backbone in about the first 20% of the blank. Relatively fast. I'm going to get this out of our way here, and we'll continue on talking about action a little bit. Action is important to know about. You have to decide what the technique is that you're going to fish and how the action could possibly impact that. If I'm drop shotting vertically and I got a little number 3 or a number 4 drop shot hook because I'm nose hooking, I like an extra fast. That's going to help. That little hook, it doesn't need a lot of power or a really big hook set to get into the fish's mouth. You can just kind of lift and reel. You're going to get home with that extra fast action. On the flip side of that, if I'm down in Florida and I'm punching mats with my good buddy Yon, we're going to be throwing an 1.5 ounce tungsten, and I'm going to look for something that's a little bit more moderate, and we'll go into that as we go here. But some things that I like to consider when I purchase or build my own fishing rods. And I do purchase along the way, especially if I'm in the middle of the season and I need something in a pinch. Like that's where this Daiwa came into fruition, and then I immediately broke it about 3 days later. So it really didn't help out in the long run, but that's a whole nother story. But I do buy some factory rods along the way. But what I look for in a factory rod, when I look at powers, And this is where it gets a little more nuanced. There is no industry standard from a medium to a medium heavy to a medium light. That's going to vary from Shimano to G. Loomis to St. Croix. Bass Pro Shops lineup is going to vary. Lew's is going to be different. A custom rod that we're going to build, there's no industry standard. So that's where we get into line and lure rating. And this is where things can get a little bit more specific. And I'm going to use the rod that I'm about to build as the guiding force here to help steer this conversation a little bit. So there is the label for the rod that I just showed you guys, the one that just came out of the box today. So as we look at the information, there's a lot of numbers there, and we got to kind of break that down. So this is a North Fork Composites X-Ray blank. This is a fairly high-end blank. It's a model SJ732-1. So in North Fork speak, what does that mean? It means it's 7 foot 3 inches. It's a 2 power, so 7.3 is the length, the 2 is the power, and -1 tells us that it's a one-piece blank. If this was a two-piece blank, it would be a -2. So that's going to give us kind of the model of the rod. What does the SJ mean? That means it's a spin jig blank versus a mag taper or a mag or an MB. Some people will call it mag bass. Just really depends on the manufacturer. The big difference between them, best way I can explain it, an SJ is typically going to be a much thinner diameter. It's designed more for your spinning rods than your casting rods. Not to say you couldn't build a casting rod on an SJ, because you absolutely can, but general rule of thumb, your SJs are going to be thinner diameter at the butt end than your MBs. Your MBs are going to be much larger diameter. They're going to be more heavy duty. That's going to be your jig rods, your swim bait rods, your worming rods, things of that nature. So if you're going to look for an MB, you're probably looking at a jig rod or a worm rod, something along those lines in the bass world. But again, SJ versus MB, it just kind of refers to the diameter of the blank. It's the best way that I can explain that to you. Now, let's get into some of these other numbers. Extra fast, we talked about what the action is and what the purpose of that is. It's a light power. Again, no industry standard there. That's where the numbers get more, a little more complex, a little more intricate. So when I build a rod, I ask myself, what is going to be the primary technique? And the best way I can break this down is just to show you, I am building this rod specifically to fish this jig right here. Now, when I fish a rod, I like to live in the middle of its specifications. So this is a 1/8 to 3/8 ounce rod, or a 6 to 10 pound test rod. This is the Jig Squad Finesse jig. We've talked about this on the channel a bunch in the past. It's a 1/8 ounce jig. One thing we have to understand though is how the line, the rod, and the lure all work together. This says 1/8 on the package. 1/8 means that the jig head and the hook weigh 1/8 of an ounce. Now when my buddy Kuda ties on the silicone strands, we're adding weight. When I go ahead and I throw on this X-Zone Stealth Finesse Craw, I'm adding more weight. This 1/8 ounce jig, I'm going to weigh it real quick, comes in at 0.28 ounces. So it's a 1/4 of an ounce, just over a 1/4 of an ounce, and I'm going to be in the middle of the specs. Why do I want to be in the middle of the specs, people will ask me. I am a firm believer that when North Fork Composites built that blank, or when G. Loomis built the rod that you have in your boat, or Abu Garcia, or Bass Pro Shops, whatever rod it is, they built it with a very specific purpose in mind, and they're telling you what the tolerances of the blank is, and they're telling you how to get the best performance out of that rod. If you live in the middle of those specifications, you'll get the best castability, and you're going to get the best possible fighting power out of that rod. There's just no denying it. And how does that work? So this is a 6 to 10 pound test rod. If I go ahead and I load that thing up with 2 pound line, there's a good chance I'm going to break the line a whole bunch. The rod's not soft enough to give enough for 2 pound line. The line becomes the weak point. On the flip side of that, if I put 25 pound test rod and I start cracking fish on it, I'm going to overload the blank. I'm going to run the risk of breaking the actual rod when I do that. There's just no way around it. Can you get away with it a couple of times? Sure. Can you get away with it 100 times? Probably. 1,000 times? Probably not. At some point, you're going to run the risk of breaking that rod. Same goes to the lure rating. When I'm living in the middle, I'm going to get, again, the best possible castability. while maintaining accuracy and being able to be efficient with the rod. So again, I don't want to fish outside the parameters of the rod if I can help it. Sure, there might be a specific time and place where you go a little bit heavier, but what you don't want to do is put a 1 ounce bait on a 3/8 ounce rod. A couple things are going to happen there. You're going to be able to cast it a country mile. You'll have no idea where that cast is going to go because you're overloading the blank, and you're potentially, again, running risk of damage to the rod. So live within the parameters on the decals, you guys. They're there for a reason, and they're there because there is no industry standard when it comes to power. Now, how does line impact rod selection? You have to ask yourself, am I going to throw straight fluorocarbon? Am I going to throw braid to fluorocarbon leader? Am I going to throw straight braid? Those all change, for me, the action of the rod potentially. If I'm throwing straight fluorocarbon with a drop shot, this little finesse jig that we talked about, straight fluorocarbon, no problem, extra fast, not an issue at all. If I'm going to drop shot with a braid to fluorocarbon leader, extra fast in those lighter lineups is probably just fine. If I'm going to throw a 1/2 ounce jig with 30-pound braid to an 18-pound leader, now I'm going to look for something that's more fast versus extra fast. The reason I'm doing that is because when I load up on that fish and I slackline it, especially crack on it really hard, there's going to be some weak points along the way. If the rod doesn't give, fast versus extra fast, bend a little deeper into the rod, you're going to end up with 2 real points of failure potentially. Number one is going to be your connector knot, excuse me. So if you're tying the FG or the Alberto or a uni to uni, whatever it is, if the rod is too stiff, that connector knot is going to be the first point of failure. And if it's not there, it's going to be down at the line tie. If the rod is too stiff and the line is too stiff, usually you're going to lose it closer to your knot up here or at the connector. On the flip side of that, if I'm punching mats down on Lake Okeechobee with my good buddy Yon, like we talk about sometimes, I'm going to look for a more moderate rod. The reason I'm going to do that is I'm looking for a mod fast, probably going to be throwing 7.6, 7.8 heavy, maybe even an extra heavy, and we're probably going to be on 50 or 65 pound straight braid. So if I do that on, let's just say, 7-foot 8-inch, extra heavy, extra fast, there's no give in the rod, there's no give in the 65-pound braid, so now we have 2 more failure points. Number one is going to be the hook. We're probably not going to bend out a flipping hook, but we are going to run the risk of ripping a huge hole in that fish's mouth, and if that fish gets the opportunity to go airborne with 1.5 ounces of tungsten out in front of it, that hook's going to pop out of that giant hole that we just ripped in that fish's mouth. So I'm going to look for something more moderate and then get that braid, and hopefully we're going to punch that hook into the roof of their mouth and not have that huge hole in the side of the fish's mouth. We're going to keep more fish pinned on that softer bend. Same goes for a crankbait rod. If we're throwing 6XD with 2 big treble hooks on it and a big old bodied bait, we need a more moderate rod to keep those hooks pinned, right? So it's understanding, again, your rod, reel, line, and lure, they all function together as a system. They're a team. They do not work independently of one another. I cannot emphasize that enough, you guys. Look at that line rating, look at that lure rating, and then compare it. You might find a medium heavy out there that's a 10 to 17 pound line, 1/4 to 3/4 ounce. To me, that's a true medium heavy. There will be other companies out there that'll call their medium heavy a 12 to 20 that's rated up to 1 ounce. In my opinion, you're now looking at a heavy power rod, not a medium heavy. So the line and lure is going to tell more of the story than the power stamped on the side of it. I hope that makes sense to you guys. I've done my best here to be as brief as I can, as informational as I can. If you have any more questions, you guys, please either drop them below in the comments. If you're embarrassed or you're afraid somebody's going to get snippy with you because there seems to be a lot of gear shaming going on right now out there on the socials, shoot me a DM on my Instagram. I'll do my best to get to you as fast as I can. I'm not great about my DMs, but I respond to all my comments here relatively quickly. And again, if you don't want to put it out there for public consumptions, I'm the same handle over on Instagram, Fishing262. Give me a follow, shoot me a DM. I'll answer any questions that I can for you to help speed up your learning curve on this stuff. So I'm going to get out of here. We're approaching the 15-minute mark. You guys know I don't like to take too much of your time. I appreciate each and every one of you for tuning into the video. We'll catch you on the next one. Tight lines, everybody.